The supply ship turned up on the horizon about noon. At first, it was just a tiny dot in an immense blue. The tiny dot slowly grew bigger, gradually taking on the shape of a boat, until from top of our cliff, we could see the contours of a bow, a small mast, and the vertical line of a funnel. Slowly but surely, the dot was becoming a ship. It was the middle of summer. There had been no wind for days, and a hot, heavy sultriness hung above the Adriatic, scarcely visible to the east, and the two nearest Croatian islands, Lastovo and Vis, loomed out of the haze like dark, fuzzy shadows. On the other side, to the west, the view was clearer, and the Italian coast closer. Monte Gargano rested on the blue surface like a dead whale, while the Apennines stretched out above the sea like some dark, thin film. I was standing on the summit of Palagruja with the archaeologist Baut. There we were beside a lighthouse on the top of a cliff in the middle of the Adriatic, 22 miles away from Monte Gargano in Puglia and some 30 miles south from the outer Croatian islands. Naked from the waist up, sweating and dirty from the red earth, Baut and myself have spent the last 4 months excavating the temple of Greek god Diomedes with our bare nails. The temple was located on the island's only and not particularly large plateau, right on the island's crown at a height of 200 meters above the sea, hovering on the edge of a sheer precipice. We got up every day at dawn while it was still cool, poked around in the dolomitic earth until noon, and then when the heat hit, we would sit in what meager shade there was to eat our cheese, rusks and figs. Every day the same routine, and on this particular day too, except for the fact that on this day we saw the sight which came about at regular monthly intervals and which we desperately longed for, the sight of the lighthouse supply ship that stopped being just a dot on the horizon and, finally becoming clearly visible, sailed into the waters of the Palagruja archipelago. It was a regular monthly ritual. The boat would sail around the northern tip of the island and then into the sheltered bay of the Italian side, the only part of the island which offered an accessible shore and a secure anchorage. Gliding into position, the boat would be moored to the metal ring of a buoy secured by a stone block. The lighthouse keeper and boat's crew would then switch on a tackle winding motor that, humming loudly, would set a cableway in motion. Basket by basket, the rusty old contraption would lift the supplies ashore, boxes of milk, sugar, coffee, flour, rice, and then finally the newspapers would be hoisted along the cable. They would arrive, neatly packed as always, lightly moistened by the journey below deck. 2 packages, the monthly dose, 30 issues of Slobodna Dalmatia. Ante Baut and I had been there for 4 months. During those 4 months, I witnessed a monthly ritual that was always the same. All of us, the lighthouse keepers, their families, the laborers, and the archaeological teams, watched the news on TV every day, surfed the internet, and followed the news on websites. We knew down to the last detail what was going on over there in the real world. That's why, when the newspapers arrived once a month on the supply ship, we would shove them carelessly into a corner, like some obsolete relic, a bundle of dead news. I was the only person on the island who cultivated any affection for that pile of paper. As a hardcore paper lover, I would, in just a few hours, greedily devour a whole month of parallel lives from the other side. A month of analysis, columns, features, motoring supplements and humor sections. At least that's what I did, but not Ante Baut. Ante Baut did not watch the TV news, did not listen to the radio, did not surf the news sites. Ante Baut used the internet to send emails and nothing else. Ante Baut would wait for a monthly arrival of the old newspapers, but he wouldn't be in a hurry to read them like I was. On the contrary, he would line up them issue by issue, take them to his room and put them on a wooden bedside table. Then, on the first day of every month, his unusual ritual would start. Every morning he would get up, brew some Turkish coffee, sit on the shady terrace in front of the lighthouse keeper's house, light up a ciggy and open the newspaper for that day. Every day he would read one issue of the paper, regardless of the fact that the newspaper he was reading was 1 month old. Ante Bout lived in a space and time of his own, parallel with ours, but running 31 days late. And it was the same on this particular occasion too. As the supply ship was leaving, the laborers were loading rice and beans, and I got hold of the newspapers. Bout was standing to one side, carefully cleaning a coin that bore a dedication to the Greek god. I knew that he would not come to the house until I had read all the papers, discussed their contents with laborers, fallen silent again, and then stacked them away on a sideboard ready for him to take over. While Bout was dusting the temple shrine and the laborers were preparing brudetto and loudly discussing the news, I was reading the papers that had arrived by boat. I devoured them greedily, rushing from one issue to another, voraciously chewing my way through scandals, controversies, municipal matters, cultural polemics, and society gossip. In the space of an hour I had gulped down half of the monthly bundle. Then I arrived at the obituaries page in the issue dated July the 18th, and I saw something I did not want to see. I saw the obituary of Katarina Bui. Among the lines of death notices featuring old women with village scarves and old men with outlaw mustaches, among the faces of anonymous people due to be buried on that day in Šibenik, Lovreć, Rogoznica, Sutivan, I noticed a well-remembered face, the face of Katarina, mine and Bout's colleague, the most beautiful girl at the humanities faculty in the 1980, whenever it was. The Katarina Bui who used to walk through the faculty corridors wearing hippie moccasins and carrying Hesse and marquise under her arm, her straight dark hair swinging as she moved. The Katarina who dropped out of her archaeological degree, opened an antique shop in Torino and lived there for decades in a parallel, faraway, out-of-reach world. A world far away from Yugoslav wars, flags, nations, poverty, and episcopal epistles. As she lived far away from us too, from our daily archaeological toil and the red earth under our nails. The face in the newspaper was indeed her face, the face of Katarina Bui that Ante Bout had been in love with then, and, as if marked by fate, remained in love with her for the rest of his life. After a long and serious illness at the age of 59, it said, the funeral of the dear departed will take place on, it said, no rats. Donations to the oncology clinic welcome. We kindly ask you not to come and pay your condolences, it also said, and the names of the bereaved family and a photo. Not indecently old, but not recent enough to break the spell of Katarina's beauty. There she was with her long, dark hair and the cheekbones that made her look so intelligent, and those eyes, just as beautiful as I remembered them. I folded the newspaper and put it back on the pile. Then I took the pile to its regular place, Bout's bedside table. And then I went back to the temple to join Bout, all covered in red dust as he peeled away dirt from a votive bowl. For a moment, but only for a very short moment, I was tempted to tell him the news. But of course I stopped myself from doing it. I couldn't bring myself to say it. In Bout's world, Katarina was still alive. Let her live, I thought, for another 18 days. Over the days that followed, everything went on as usual. Bout and I carried on digging, burying our noses deep in the red earth that stuck to our sweaty backs. Every morning, Bout would get up before me, make himself a pot of coffee, light a cigarette, and pick up the next newspaper in line. The first one, then the second, the 8th, the 13th. As the days passed, I envied him more and more for being able to live in this blessed state of ignorance in another parallel, better world. A world in which Katarina Bui was not yet dead. And then the morning of the 18th arrived. Naturally, I spent a restless night and didn't sleep well at all. Just before dawn, through the thick stone walls of the Austrian lighthouse, I heard Baut get up, listen to the rasp of his smoker's cough, the sound of him washing his face. I heard him put the coffee pot on. I heard him walk towards the terrace. I was waiting for the morning sun to reach the right angle to break through the shutters into my room. I kept on listening, eavesdropping on Baut, and then, when nothing was heard for a while, I knew it was time for me to get up. Because it was then, when I could no longer hear anything from the terrace, that I knew that Baut had sat down and started reading the paper for that day. The moment I had spent 18 days preparing for had arrived. The moment when I had to get up and get dressed, when I had to go out onto the terrace, when I had to approach the man sitting under a terrace, to go up to him, shake his hand, and say the 2 words I had spent the last 18 days practicing. The moment had arrived when I had to say something that I wish I had heard from somebody else, but that somebody had not been here. My condolences. That is all I'm going to say. That and nothing else.